Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS religion. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs. I moved out of that community when I was 18 years old.
And I was raised LDS, and Sam and I have been married for almost 8 years and have 2 beautiful babies.
Yep, time flies.
So we wanted to share today 5 things that make you a good polygamist. We'll give you all the secrets. This is no encouragement to go and try to become one, but it is a way to know what was required to be considered a good one.
Exactly. And when we say polygamous, we're referring to the FLDS religion, because I know that there are other polygamous groups out there that live completely different.
Yes, than what they did.
Exactly. And also, when we say polygamist, we do understand that I never was a polygamist. I never practiced polygamy, I guess you could say. But I grew up in a polygamous family, and we would even joke to each other when we were out and about outside of the community. If we saw someone else, we would say, "Oh, hey, it's a polygamist," So it was just something that made us stand out and so different from those around us. So we would consider ourselves polygamists.
Yeah, we've had that question before. People are like, "He never practiced polygamy," and we're like, "No, but he was part of a polygamous family. He did have 4 mothers in the home for his whole life." So. He definitely still, that's why we call him a polygamist, or that he came from polygamy, and that...
Not anymore.
Yeah. And that he knows how to be a good polygamist, because he was a polygamist boy.
Yes. So we're going to talk about the top 5 things that would make you a good member of the FLDS community or a good polygamist.
Yeah.
So number 1 would be definitely obey the prophet. So that would definitely be the number 1, and that's just, I know that people living out there would probably say, no, we would put Jesus Christ first, and he was number 1. But it didn't seem that way. It seemed like the prophet was number 1, and everyone looked to this man as, this is the person that knows everything, this is who we follow.
Well, and they believe that a prophet means that he is a prophet, seer, revelator, and the mouthpiece for God. True. So meaning that a lot of times, with the Bible or things that... the ways that we hear of Jesus Christ's words, people can say, well, Christ didn't actually write that down, or they can make an argument for interpreting what Christ said, and for members of the FLDS church, like, no, it was however the prophet interpreted what Christ said, and then even more importantly, that is a direct link between God and people is the prophet himself. So the mouthpiece of God is always going to trump whatever any scripture says, because that could have been, interpreted incorrectly or translated incorrectly. There's always a room for error, but according to Warren Jeffs, there is no error between him and God.
Of course.
Yeah.
So all the members, the followers of Warren Jeffs would consider that following Warren Jeffs was also following God, because they assumed that it was the exact same thing in their mind. But even some of the songs were giving praises to the prophet and to Warren Jeffs, and so it definitely seemed like it was a lot based around following this man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obey the prophet would be number one, definitely. Number 2 would be kind of hand in hand with that, keep sweet. So I know that a lot of you have probably heard of this phrase. It's a very common phrase used out there in the FLDS community. But it's definitely something that was used all the time. We're talking even some of the mothers would use it when, for example, I would be riding my bike and I would crash and bump my head really hard or something, and I would want to say a bad word, and my mother would say, "Remember, Samuel, keep sweet," So definitely something that was used all the time.
Fun fact, his entire family, they didn't believe in using nicknames.
True.
So it's always cute. Anybody, and a lot of his siblings, because of the fact that they all grew up that, like, they'll still call each other, like, whenever I hear someone call him Samuel, I'm like, oh, that's one of his biological siblings. Because,
somebody that grew up with me when I was a kid.
Yeah, so super funny fact. But keeping sweet too, whenever I hear it, I'd say the main things that come to my mind is like keeping in line and obedience. And it was used a lot towards women.
It's true.
They'd say, oh, keep sweet, like all the things that you should do. making sure that you do those and that you don't ever do anything you're not supposed to. Like, oh, don't get a temper. Don't be jealous of the other wives. Don't talk back to father. Don't go against father's rules. Don't go against the prophet's rules. Make sure you're following Jessica. Like all these things. In the FLDS, there's a very long list of shoulds and what you were supposed to be doing. And so keeping sweet was a way of just basically saying, like, stay in line. Stay doing what you're supposed to be doing. You know what you're supposed to be doing.
A simple way to say it would be obey no matter what and be happy about it, darn it. That's kind of what it was all about.
Put a smile on your face about it.
No matter what was asked of you to do, no matter if it came from the father of the house or the prophet, they wanted you to just set aside your fears, set aside your sadness if that's what it was, and just obey and figure out how to be happy about it. Yeah.
So,
which you can imagine would be something that would be necessary if there were more than one wife, because I mean it's definitely something that even out there in the FLDS community, some wives would get jealous and that type of thing. I mean, we were all still human. Yep.
Yeah, so they had to be reminded all the time to keep sweet.
Yes. So number 3, another very, very important one would be no dating or no any type of relationship with the opposite sex from one family to another. Just there was none of that allowed. So, and primarily the number one reason for that was because all marriages, all relationships were arranged and determined by the prophet.
Yes, and in other videos, Sam's talked about like past prophets. There would be times where people could like suggest or kind of ask for a specific person to be married. Warren Jeffs is super power hungry, and so that stopped with him. So, I mean, Warren Jeffs has been their prophet for a very long time at this point and been in control for a very long time, and so that was never an option. And basically, anytime someone would date or try to have relationships outside of who he wanted, he was losing some type of control over everybody's lives.
Yep, and it was so important that any of these people that got caught, let's say a boy from one family and a girl from another family get together, they have some type of relationship, and they would get kicked out. If not the girl, the boy would get kicked out of the community for doing that. It was a big no-no.
Yeah, so that's definitely, in order to be a good polygamist or a good FLDS member, definitely cannot be dating or trying to reach out to members of the opposite sex.
So that was a huge no-no.
Number 4.
Yes, and number 4 would be dress code. So for any of you that have lived or been in southern Utah for a long extended period of time, you probably know what I'm talking about. That the FLDS members have a very distinct way of dressing, and it all comes down to modesty. They feel that you're only being modest if you are covered from collarbone to wrists to ankles at all times, during the day, during the night.
Yes, and I mean, this is for all ages. Even their infants, they put in dresses all the way down to, like little girls or little boys. They still have all the way to their collars, all the way down to their wrists, and all the way down to their ankles. Does not matter the temperature, does not matter anything. Like, that is still how it is for everyone. And we actually had a question that someone had posted on one of our previous videos about pajamas.
Yes.
So, I mean, during the day, girls have to wear prairie dresses and be completely covered. And then the men had to wear, long pants and buttoned up shirts with collars.
With a collar, yep.
So that was typical during the day. But what about pajamas?
And yes, buttoned up shirts with collars, even in construction in 118-degree weather, yes, at all times. And yes, if you're swimming, the same thing. You could not take off your clothes to go swimming.
No rolling up your sleeves either. That was a sign of rebellion if you did that, right?
Yeah, I was a little rebellious sometimes out there working. It got too hot and we'd roll up our sleeves, but we weren't supposed to.
Yeah, it was considered a sign. Like, it was actually something that was told, like, don't do that.
Yep, it's true. But back to pajamas. So, so the women would basically wear a more casual dress for pajamas. It was still something that would cover all the way down to their ankles, and it was basically just a very simple dress is what it looked like.
So just a long nightgown?
Basically a nightgown,
Was it comfy material, or was it like the same, you probably don't know,
I would have no idea.
I'm going to ask my sister-in-law
or
let you guys all know. Call you guys back. I'm going to call you back.
Yeah, it looked comfy, sure. It's probably more comfortable than what I was wearing for pajamas, but no. But for the guys, it was a very traditional long sleeve, I guess pants, but it was very comfortable material. A lot of the times we would wear the ones that have like the button down top with the collar, if you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly
those pajamas,
what you're
the more of a like a silky feel to it, a little more comfortable. But yeah, so it was even during the nighttime, even in your own family, you know, it was something that we were always covered. The only time we would take our clothes off is if we were going to a shower, and that was something that we would go dressed to the shower, and when we left the bathroom, we were completely dressed once again.
I was gonna ask, were you guys allowed to see each other in your pajamas?
In our pajamas?
Yeah, like I know that you were like completely covered, but it wasn't considered like.
Oh yeah, no.
You could see once your sisters in their pajamas.
Oh yeah, once you're in your pajamas, then free.
Then it's all good.
Yeah, free range, free roaming.
Okay, just curious. I mean, whenever there's like questions like that, I'm like, who knows? It sounds like it may be a weird thing if they couldn't, but I wouldn't put it past them.
So I mean, because the pajamas were also so modest, you know, it was. But I don't think that it would have been frowned upon to walk out of your house in pajamas.
Okay.
But around the family, in the house, it was no problem.
Okay, good to know.
Yep.
Okay.
So dress code, very, very important. And number 5 would be tithing. Yes, so paying your tithing to the church, and also, I guess, hand in hand with that would be hard work.
Yeah, because in addition to, so for instance, like in the LDS church I grew up in, you would pay it 10% of your income and to the church. But tithing for the FLDS looked a little different because you guys actually had like your work kind of tithed as well, right?
Kind of. I mean,
like it was just expected.
Yes. I mean, there was time and work that was supposed to be given to the church, basically, but also money. But money wasn't really a percentage that you gave to the church. It was more of a calling that would, in some church meetings, a leader of the church would stand up and say, all men at a certain age and above turn in, for example, $2,000 to the church. And all of the men in that age range would give $2,000 to the church. So it was more like a calling, like, all right, we're going to call everyone up to pay tithing.
So did you guys like have to have like a separate like savings ready for whenever they called, or did everyone just kind of scrape up money when it came up, or? So
I believe most men that were in that age would try to save some aside just so that they would have it available if they were called upon to pay that tithing.
What was the biggest calling that you ever personally saw?
Well, I know that it went well beyond this, but that I personally saw was $2,000.
Okay.
So that's the largest I ever saw. But I was never in that age group to be able to pay that because I left right as I turned 18. So for me, it was more of the money that I made, I was supposed to give a certain amount of my money to my father. So it was, I guess, money to help around the house, to help the family. A lot of people have had this question, how in the world did one man provide for such a big family? Yeah. Well, it wasn't really, by the time it was such a big family, there were a lot of older boys, a lot of older men that were...
people working.
Exactly. So we were all working and turning in some of that money to help around the house.
Gotcha. Good. So those are your 5 things that you need to be a good polygamist, good member of the FLDS. Is number 1, obey the prophet, keeping sweet, which basically continuing to obey.
Obey and obey.
Oh, yeah. Obey the dating rules, obey the dress code, and give money and your time to the church. Yep. So, again, this is not encouragement to go join the FLDS and try to participate in these directly.
We have received a message or 2 or 3 of people asking how to join the FLDS church. For those of you that are wondering that, I have no idea. So I'm sorry I can't be of any help here.
No, and we would not recommend it. So
I wouldn't recommend it.
But if you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam growing up in polygamy, please like and subscribe.
Yes.
And we'll talk to y'all soon.
We will talk to you soon.